Good morning, members. We have 7 items on the agenda, 6 of which were also on the agenda of the previous meeting. I remind members that if there are direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to discussion items of today's meeting, then please, according to Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure, disclose the nature of the interest before you speak. I also remind members to note the relevant requirements in Rule 84 of the ROP in relation to voting in the circumstances of direct pecuniary interest. Now we'll continue to discuss paper PWSC 2015-16-3 272 RS, the Kai-Tak Multiple Purpose Sports Complex, MPSC. Now, members have been asking questions, and some members have asked questions 4 or 5 times already. And I now invite Mr. Leung Kwok Hong in the queue to ask his question in the 5th round. Now, last time we asked the government questions on security. Now, of course, I understand the government is also very concerned about crowd control. Otherwise, they would not have bought 3 water cannon vehicles. Now, the crowd will be diverted to the stadium under construction, and last time Mr. Chen also asked that it is rare for such facility to be installed in an urban area close to residential neighborhoods, because, well, it's not often that we see some hooligans in football events in Hong Kong. But our question was whether you have done any assessment, because I used to live there, I used to see the harbor, now I only see Kai Ching Estate. So I have this question for the government. Has the government conducted any such assessment? And I am really disappointed to see this in the newspaper. Mr. Zheng Dak-seng, Secretary for Home Affairs, attended a dinner banquet concerning the May 4th movement, and I think that as the Bureau Director, he should get some figures from the relevant bureaus and departments as to whether there is any longitudinal or lateral comparison, that is, for similar stadiums or stadiums similar to Hong Kong, whether there is such an experience in other jurisdictions. Well, for example, in Singapore, the stadium is built close to waters. I mean, it's surrounded by sea or the waterfront on the 3 sides of the stadium. So last week we already asked this question, and my question is whether the Home Affairs Bureau asked the Security Bureau the relevant question. So, Chairman, would you please ask government these questions for me?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, as part of the pre-construction work for which we're currently seeking funding and the pre-planning work, we will need to do a thorough assessment of the movement of people, particularly during major events at the main stadium. It's quite right that Singapore, in recently developing their Singapore Sports Hub, placed a particular emphasis on this aspect, and we have been in close contact with them, and certainly at the detailed planning stage this will be a concern. I do also believe that at the wider Kai-Tak planning stage there has been some initial circulation of the wider plans to the police, and the police had no concerns at that time when the overall plan for Kai Tak, which included also the planning for the multi-purpose sports complex, were put forward. But certainly a detailed assessment will have to be done at the detailed planning stage as part of the pre-construction work.
I'll
ask next time, Mr. Ray Chen. Thank you, Chairman. Towards the end of April, the government supplemented the paper responding to some questions that we previously asked, and I'd like to follow up on these questions with the government. Point 7 of the paper lists out a number of events, and due to constraints such as noise limit and other constraints, some concerts of such as the concerts of Jay Chou and Mariah Carey couldn't be held. And is it because the relevant parties negotiated with the Hong Kong authority and found that our conditions are not very good? Or is it because of what you see, because of the constraints of Hong Kong Stadium, and that we have poor seating and poor plane service, and that we did not even apply? Because we need to compete globally. And recently, the concerts by Jay Chou and Mariah Carey will be held in Singapore. And as for the relevant events,
as I think we've said in the supplementary letter written to the committee, these are simply examples. There are many, many more examples of events that have taken place in the fairly recent past all over the world, events that could not take place in Hong Kong, in our current Hong Kong Stadium, for various reasons. In terms of the coverage, there are also many more examples that we could have drawn from, say, the Asian region. This is simply to give a flavour of the types of event that certainly cannot be held at the Hong Kong Stadium now.
Chairman, I'm sorry. I don't know whether you understand my question very clearly. I asked about the events listed. Were they events that you try to compete with others or bid for these events, and yet we did not have the edge? Or is it because you just copied from the number of international major events? And secondly, are these your targets? Let's say if we have a 50,000 seat stadium, these will be the events that will be held.
Try and be a little bit more forthcoming in that case. These are certainly also, I think it's fair to say, examples of the types of events that we would hope to attract. But it's not an exclusive list. We would certainly be looking to have these types of new event coming to Hong Kong, the kinds of event we just simply cannot enjoy at the moment.
Chen Yu.
Well, Chairman, do you think he has answered your question? I think he has. He would hope so. Well, so it's not the case that you try to bid for these events. Now, as you can see in Annex A, the utilization of Hong Kong Stadium has been dropping in terms of the number of days. Is it the case that you no longer have any indicator or target, and that there is no pressure to attract more attendances? Because, as you see, we don't have many sports events.
係，陳議員。
係問咗大球場嗰個使用，其實政府而家係放
Utilization of Hong Kong Stadium. Any indicator?
I think it's very clear there has been a slight decrease over the last 3 years, but I don't see any particular long-term trend. I would add, however, that the mode of operation of the Hong Kong Stadium, as I've said before, is quite passive. We simply accept bookings. Certainly for the new venues at the multi-purpose sports complex, we would certainly encourage a much more active approach to promoting the venue and promoting events than we currently have.
Mr. Lee Choi-yan. Chairman, Now, in relation to the 50,000-seat stadium for concerts, not even for sports events, the Labour Party has grave doubts. You say this is an international stadium, but my question is, how many such events are you going to hold there? Because for international celebrities, Beyonce, Mariah Carey, of course you will be able to attract tens of thousands of audience, but they have choices around the world. So how many of them will actually come to Hong Kong in a year? Let's say if there are only several events a year, then what is the point? I doubt how many shows you will have for these international celebrities in a year. If you only have a few shows a year, it's really worthwhile to have a 50,000-seat stadium.
Chairman, I think we've covered these points in paragraphs 10 to 12 of the supplementary information that we provided on the 30th of April in response to almost exactly the same question that was raised at the meeting on the 21st of April. I can repeat what's in there, but very simply put, pending further detailed study at the pre-construction stage, which we are currently seeking funding for, it would be pure speculation to give an estimate of the total number of event days to be accommodated at the main stadium in the year 2020 to 21, which is when we would expect it to be commissioned. We can certainly give more examples of events that have taken place in other stadiums, events that currently cannot take place at the Hong Kong Stadium. But I think we've dealt with this issue quite comprehensively in the supplementary information and in our previous responses.
Well, Permanent Secretary, at the last meeting, you mentioned that for the further study at the pre-construction stage, the study may conclude that we could do away with the 50,000-seat stadium. Am I correct?
Saying that it would result in the possibility of an entire major component of the sports centre not going ahead. I think we're simply saying that we need to do further pre-construction work and planning before we can have a far clearer idea of exactly the kind of scope of events that we could have at the various venues at the complex, including the main stadium.
Well, Deputy Secretary, I hope you, by now, if not before, would appreciate that many of members of the PWSC have great reservations about whether we need a 50,000-seat sports facilities. Now, if you say, for the record, that since this is a pre-construction study that you are seeking funding for, if that study might produce a result, of course, on sound grounds and for good reasons, that this 50,000-seat venue could go, that would help the funding. I just want you to clarify for the record. Otherwise, we would be at this impasse forever.
Chairman, I think the purpose of pre-construction work of the nature that we're seeking funding for is to help us clarify the conditions of the site, the various other planning aspects that we need to take account of, including the issues that have been raised by members. And clearly, that will then give us a far better idea of what the actual scope of the final project that we come to this committee for seeking funding for should be. Clearly, and I'm very happy to say for the record, the current scope that we have is certainly subject to change pending the outcome of the pre-construction detailed planning work.
So in that case, so after you've finished with your study, and that includes the question I asked earlier, that is what is the possibility of, or rather how many such events were likely to be staged in a year. If there are going to be only a few, then I really question whether or not that is cost effective. So in your study, will you also be looking at the question of cost effectiveness? And I think you need to promise that if it is not cost effective, you will not, build such a stadium with seating capacity of 55,000. But then if you, reduce it to only 10,000, it may not really be worth the while. 55,000 may be too large. It's not worth the while to build a 10,000 seating seat stadium. So is there a better way to proceed that is less simply stick to the stadium?
We are very anxious that we don't go into something which is not viable. It's very, very important that we ensure and satisfy ourselves that we feel this will be a viable, well-used, cost-effective facility. This is very much the Bureau's standpoint. I do take on board the concerns that have been raised by members of this committee, and I can assure you we will be looking at these issues in detail during the pre-construction phase and trying to make sure that we have the best possible handle on the viability of this particular venue.
梁國雄議員。
主席，即係佢呃我唔到，因為我係球迷嚟嘅。
I mean, I don't think he can fool me because I'm a football fan. You talk about the Hong Kong Stadium. I don't think we have many matches for which we have a full house. Mr. Leung, I'm afraid I have to interrupt here. My understanding is that the question you're going to ask has already been asked many times already. So would you like to repeat your question? Or do you have a new angle to raise? Yes. Okay. It's very unlikely that we're going to have full house events when we come to football matches. And you also talk about the difficulty of the noise constraint because the people who live there are rather affluent. Once they hear any noises, they will complain. So if after you build a facility, originally you planned to stage rock concerts there, but then if rich people complain, then you can't do it. So why don't you simply, provide for, a cover, a shelter at the stadium? If you look at the Euro Cup, many of the stadia are already covered. So if there's anything should happen, or even in the event of inclement weather, you can cover up the stadium, or so that there won't be any noise nuisance as well. So have you ever conducted such a study? So you need a plan. We want to build such a stadium, but you've not told us whether or not Hong Kong in future wants to become like Japan. That is, that we're going to be an entertainment hub. So whenever a pop band wants to tour Asia, Hong Kong certainly will be on the itinerary. I mean, same for Japan. If that's the case, then you can tell our member who represents the tourism ministry. You have to think like that. If you're going to invite Fei Wong to come and perform, then her fans from mainland China will come. But if you want to invite jazz singers to perform here, where are we going to find the audience? Mr. Leung, I think these are the examples that they quoted. I understand. But the direction of your question, obviously, is that you want to tell the government that the 55,000 seat facility could actually end up being a white elephant. That is not really necessary. I don't know whether or not you've noticed that the Undersecretary from the Home Affairs Bureau telling us that the funding that they are now seeking would include their study into the 55,000 seat stadium and whether or not it's operationally viable. But I don't see that it is viable. Why don't I put the question directly to him? The $60 million odd that you're going to spend, do you have a detailed breakdown as to how much you spend to study whether or not this is viable or not. Are you going to set up an independent investigation committee? What experts are you going to invite to help you? Would you like to call, for example, a J.S. Singer as an expert witness? You've not done that. You've just come here and you are actually following the style of C.Y. Leung. You just say something and that's it. Give us details, which band or which team and which company. Well, Chairman, I have to remind you that in 2003 we spent $100 million for on the Harbour Fest event, and we became a laughing stock for all the entertainment agents in the world. And in the end, yeah, Mr. Leung, let me try to put the question to the Undersecretary. My understanding of Mr. Leung's question is that he wants you to tell us clearly how you can convince Mr. Leung that the funding that you are seeking to conduct this study will likely lead to the conclusion that the 50,000-seat stadium may not need to be built after all. Could you try to tell Mr. Leung how you can convince him that that is a possibility?
To do is to go back to the briefing that we gave the Home Affairs panel in February 2014, when we made it very clear what our approach to the planning of this complex would be. And in briefing the panel, we made it very clear that on the one side there would be the technical pre-construction work, which is the subject of this funding application, which is very much to do with the surveying, with the site work, with the technical specifications, with the interface with the other projects in Kai Tak. This is pre-construction related work. The other element, which will go hand in hand with the actual technical planning, is the operational planning. And during the operational planning phase, we will be engaging an operating consultant to help us evaluate the business profile, the event profile, and the detailed operating requirements of the future sports complex. That particular consultancy is the subject of a separate funding operation in the annual estimates, and we are currently seeking bidders for that project. So these two elements of the planning will go hand in hand to allow us to have a very full picture of what is the best model for construction and for viability of the future facilities at the multipurpose sports complex.
Well, that means that, let me further clarify this and put it on record. So you're now, the study for which you're now seeking funding approval may lead to the conclusion that this 55,000-seat stadium may, because operationally it may not be economically viable, and as a result you may have to give it up. And in the paper I have noticed that you've put this stadium in paragraph 4A, and 4A will be retained under Cat B. So in other words, your study and the funding that you're now seeking for the study may result in your coming to a conclusion that the 4A, which is now under Category B, will never be upgraded to Cat A. Could you confirm whether or not that is the case?
Items 4A to J will all be reviewed during the pre-construction phase.
Okay, let's continue with our discussion. I've already put on record the answers given by the Undersecretary. Next, we have Mr. Kenneth Chan.
The granting of the $62.7 million for the preliminary study. Now, basically, I always believe Reaganomics, because I always believe supply creates its own demand. And I always think that the economic theory still holds. And in fact, for the past many years, I'm a frequent concert goer, ranging from, what Honorable Leung Kong said, the jazz pop stars, which I think there will be one next week, Dionne Warwick, to pop stars like Backstreet Boys and Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift, because my taste is very varied. And in fact, we are losing out quite a lot of these very good and entertaining events to Macau. And in fact, a lot of these great concerts are being held in Macau. And I believe that either way, if the stadium, of course, I mean, there is a discussion about the size of the stadium and whether there should be a roof to that as well. If we had a more venue for holding either sports events or concerts of international standard, that would be a great benefit, not only for the tourists, but also for the people of Hong Kong, because we lack these cultural venues. That's why I think I am, and also I can speak for my think tank Professional Commons, we are in support of this $62 million of expenses for the preliminary study, provided that, of course, I would urge the government to have longer-term plan how to make full utilization of the facilities. In fact, I think you should give us a projection of the kind of plans, projects, and also the projected benefits and revenues that could be generated from these facilities in more detail, and breaking down the projections into in 3 years' time, 5 years' time, and that would be of great help for all of us to appreciate the cost benefit of the whole project. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Deputy Secretary, do you want to respond to the honourable member's question?
Chairman, I would simply say that I agree that it's absolutely necessary for us during this advanced planning stage to put together at least our best estimate of the types of projections that the honourable member has asked for, and we will be doing that as part of the pre-construction and detailed planning work.
So we can expect to see in the deliverables, after allowing this funding of 62 million, that what the Honourable Kenneth Leung just asked for would be there.
Chairman, we will be able to provide more detailed and more forward-looking projections after we've done more of the planning work, yes.
Thank you. 下一位謝偉銓議員。
多謝主席。
Mr. Tony Chair, Hong Kong being a cosmopolitan city, I think we need all these facilities. For the Kai Tak multi-purpose sports complex, I would support the proposal to build this facility at Kai Tak. But as I've said at the panel earlier, that is how we should proceed to build this project. In the past, the government had told us that it's going to be a design, build, and operate approach. I think those from our sector, including some architects, hold a different view. So at the panel meeting, I had asked the government this, that if the government think that this is the best approach, then they should give us more information and justification and tell us how we should proceed to build this project, because this is such a large project. Should we separate the design and then we have a separate tender for the construction and consider how it's going to be operated after it's built? So far, we've not been given such information. But recently, and I don't want to clarify this point, I'd like to ask whether the government has already decided to adopt this approach. Of course, the funding that you are now seeking is $62 million, mainly for the advanced works, including the preparation of the tender document. So I'd like to know this. According, well, I've actually had, read some information which indicated the government seems to have made its decision. But if that's the case, I would have great objections. You need to convince us that this is the best approach. Otherwise, I think adopting this approach, namely the design, build, and operate approach to build this project, is really should really be reconsidered. we want to, achieve the optimum, result. So I want the government to give us a clear answer. That is how it's going to eventually, build this project. Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate that there are various different opinions on the most appropriate form of contract for delivering this project. When we briefed the Home Affairs panel in February last year on the findings of our initial procurement consultancy, which was undertaken by PWSC, I think we made it clear that the recommendation from those consultants was that we should go for a design, build, operate package contract. At that stage, they identified 4 clear benefits for a project of this kind for going ahead with that, in that it would incentivise the contractors to work together and manage interface issues. It would help ensure the facility was designed and built with an understanding of how the operator intends to operate the complex to achieve efficiency and maximise revenue streams. The third item was that they felt it would minimise the conflict between the design, construction and operation phases of the project. And fourthly, it would allow the government to manage the project more easily by having a single implementation consortium doing the whole thing. Having said that, clearly as part of the pre-construction work, we will be looking at the detailed tendering arrangements for this project. Which means to say that although currently our inclination is to go with the recommendation of PWSC, bearing in mind that this is an approach that's been tried and tested elsewhere for similar types of infrastructure, still I would say we've not reached a firm and final decision on that at this stage. We will still have to go through the pre-construction work, through the designing of the contract documents to ensure that we feel that is actually the best delivery mode.
Mr. Tony Chair, I'm really disappointed in the government's reply, because this is based on the consultancy report. We have no idea how this consultancy report came by. Have you taken into account the views of the Hong Kong Institute of Architects? And on the design, build, operate model, you only talk about the benefits. What about other models? Why do we need to adopt this approach for this project? Why is it that you need to take a consolidated approach for all the facilities in this complex? What are the benefits for our people, for the government? Well, what you said is quite generalized, but we need to look into the details. And I think the government's reply is not very definitive, but I think that they're heading this direction anyway, because definitely the tender document would be prepared in such a way. So when are you going to come back to LegCo to explain to us in detail? And we also draw, consider the views of professional bodies, because we know nothing yet, and I think it's totally irresponsible to decide on this now. Now, yes, can you explain to us more clearly? Because according to Mr. Tony Chair's observation, his argument is sound, because in para 3 of the paper, for the parts to be upgraded to category A, when you prepare the tender document, you have the number of points here, and there will be some assumptions. Is it that they will be based on the DOB model before you look for consultants? So you need to explain to Mr. Tony Chair and other members of this subcommittee whether the government has accepted the consultancy report you mentioned. That is, you're going to adopt the DBO approach as the basis for the funding application of $62.7 million for the pre-construction study.
From a technical perspective, my understanding, and maybe my architectural service colleagues can confirm this and back it up, is that by starting the work, the pre-construction work that we're requesting at the moment, the technical work, this does not of itself lock us in to delivering the project by DBO mode. This is the same sort of work you would be doing, whatever contract approach is going ahead. And I would assure the honourable member that whilst DBO is certainly highly recommended by our procurement consultants, as part of the planning work, we will obviously be reviewing whether or not this is still the preferred method, and part of our work will involve consulting stakeholder organisations as well. There are pluses and minuses with all approaches. Obviously, I've just outlined the positives of what we think is, at this stage, the best approach, but there are other considerations that we will take into account during the pre-planning stage.
Mr. Tony Chair, I will allow you to follow up on his answer. So, Chairman, I hope the government could make this undertaking, that before they make a decision, they should come back to LegCo and explain to us in detail the approach to be taken for further discussion here. And they should consult the professional bodies on the approach, on the various approaches, their pros and cons. I'm not saying, Chairman, that a particular model is the best. However, if this is only based on a consultancy report of which we don't know much about, I think it's irresponsible to make a decision based on that. So I hope the government would undertake that they would come back to LegCo before they make a decision. DS, could you make this undertaking as requested by Mr. Tony Chair? And would you also tell members of the PWSC that for the funding application of $62.7 million, there will also be other DBO models to be looked into?
The pre-planning work, whether it's part of this technical consultancy or the operation consultancy, will definitely take account of the optimum mode of delivering this project, in other words, the contract structure. I would be more than happy, and we should, when we come back for funding for this full project, give a full justification with very clear reasoning as to why we have chosen any particular mode of delivery of the contract. I would just add that the consultancy study that I referred to is actually on the Home Affairs Bureau website and can be easily accessed, and I'm happy to give the link to members after the meeting.
Mr. Ray Chan. Thank you, Chairman. Just now, Dr. Kenneth Leung said that supply creates demand. So I think this is what the government has in mind. After building this 50,000-seat stadium, they will definitely need to find some events to take up the sessions. Otherwise, how can they be accountable? However, by seeing supply creates demand, it doesn't mean that we can just go ahead boldly and build the stadium first. We need to take into account various things, the history and other constraints. So let's look at Hong Kong Stadium. How did it create demand? Now, just now I talked about its low utilization rate. It's come to a standstill. That is, the government has not promoted the stadium in order to boost its utilization. Well, say, for example, in Annex C, it sets out the events held in the Hong Kong Stadium. And in fact, this is really sloppy because even the heading is wrong. It says events initiated by the government at the Hong Kong Stadium since 2005. And the list only goes up to 2013, so nothing in 2014, 2015. You have no pressure. You don't want to promote it as well. I'm not against having more facilities. Well, we understand that we don't have enough available sessions in the Hong Kong Coliseum for concerts. Now, I'm not against the idea of building the mini dome or a mega dome, but these are two different matters. That whether we need more performance venues or sports venues. So these are the questions on the new paper. In Annex B, the government lists out the information concerning new stadia located in urban areas. Last time the question was asked why the stadium would be built in an urban area instead of a more remote location like in Lantau. Now, for the list of stadia, apart from those with the asterisks, which are new stadia, for others, they are only stadia built in urban areas that have been revamped. So the situation is different from ours, and there aren't many stadia with the asterisk. Now, for the Olympic Stadium in London, after it was built in 2012, there isn't another major stadium in London. So if you want to reply by saying that there are examples elsewhere in the world, I don't think this helps. And also, in Annex D, I have a question. We say that you haven't explained very clearly the cost estimate, and now we see that it's $25.2 billion. This estimate is based on the 2010 price level. What about this in September 2014 price level? Did you adjust the figures, or was it prepared then? Deputy Secretary.
I think Annex B is simply examples of stadium that are newly built in what we would call fairly central city areas. I don't really see there's much more I can say about it than that. It's simply a list of examples. As for the question about the breakdown at Annex D, can I refer this to my colleagues from the Architectural Services Department?
All right, Mr. Wong. Thank you, Chairman. Now, for the cost estimate in Annex D, it is based on the scope of works as set out in the requirements in the Home Affairs Bureau's document. And based on that, this is the preliminary cost estimate prepared by the ASD. And we have drawn reference from the changes in the tendering price level in the past, and we have therefore come up with a cost estimate in the September 2014 price level. This is only a rough estimate. We have not included the pre-construction survey, so this only serves as reference. Well, Chairman, well, I had the figure previously. That is 18.1 billion, and that was a Well, can the government clarify? Just now you mentioned 2009. Now for the $25.2 billion. Now after the adjustment based on the change in the tender price level, is it based on 2010 or 2009? It's based on the technical feasibility study in 2009. Mr. Albert Chan. Thank you. Chairman, I thank Mr. Tony Chair for raising this issue. This is one of the few issues raised by a member from the pro-establishment camp that is reasonable. Well, very often the Bureau Director would just ignore the problems and ignore the issue of cost effectiveness, just like the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Well, it was put up for open tender, hoping that somebody would bid for the project. In the end, nobody did, and I said that at the outset that nobody would bid for the project, and the government just passed the buck to others. The other project is a cruise terminal. I long ago pointed out that this is a white elephant project. Even if it's put up for open tender, nobody would be interested. And in the end, the government delayed the project for a year. In the end, the government just undertook the project itself.
This sports complex is going to be a major white elephant, and I think it's a major mistake. At the concept design stage, when you consider the mode of operation and so on, you operate in a vacuum. You say that it's going to be $25 billion. So under the circumstances, please tell us what sort of activities there will be to prove that this is going to be viable and that there will be organizations which are willing to undertake this project on a DBO basis. Chairman, I think we must have a clear explanation of what the government is thinking and what exactly is the government's policy in relation to DBO. If we consider the XRL, it's similar to the DBO. The MPSC is responsible for designing and building and operating the XRL, and the government will simply foot the bill. Is it going to be the same for this multi-purpose sports complex? In the past, we always talk about BTO, like the Chiang Mai Bridge, BPO, and same for the tunnels. That is, BOT rather, BOT, build, operate, and transfer. But the DBO, what exactly is DBO? Is it like the XRL? Or will they be responsible for shouldering all the construction costs? Is there no time limit to it? I think all these such policies are so vague, and you are asking us to give you the funding to conduct a study. And this is really ridiculous. Perhaps I can allow some time for the government to respond. Deputy Secretary.
I think it's clear that without the pre-construction work and detailed planning, as I've said in response to earlier questions, we would not be able to have a final and clear direction on which is the most effective means of delivering this project. And so therefore it's essential that we go through this initial planning stage in order to ensure that we have both the technical and the future operation specifications very, very clear in our mind before we come back to this subcommittee to seek funding for the construction of the main project. And when we do that, we will have the full justification that will come from the planning studies and the technical studies.
Well, Chairman, I'm not asking for a full justification. You know, my concern is if you want to have a DBO concept, you need to explain what is included, what is the government's thinking in this so-called, DBO, and why do you think DBO is acceptable, to the operator for such a huge project? Why is it financially viable? You have to provide those initial justification, not full justification. You need to explain what do you have in mind, for this DBO.
Deputy Secretary.
Yes, Chairman. As I said earlier this morning, we have actually conducted 2 consultancies on procurement and financing to give us an initial idea of what would be the most appropriate way of delivering the contract. And the original recommendation from our consultants was that a DBO would be the best way forward. And we have briefed the Home Affairs panel in some detail on this approach. The documents from the consultant are available on the HAB website and can be looked at in detail. However, as I said earlier, that is simply a direction. We have not made a final decision on whether or not this will be a DBO contract. That can only come once we've completed the pre-construction technical and operational studies.
Chairman, in that case, I would really need to look at the consultancy report as well. So given the complexity of the issue, I propose that we should adjourn our discussion on this item. Ms. Albert Chan, pursuant to the Rules of Procedure, Section 33 of the PWSC, demand that the committee adjourn its discussion on this item. That is PWSC 2015-2016 bracket 3. According to the procedure of the PWSC, members may speak, but they can speak no more than once, and they should not exceed the time limit prescribed. Given the time constraint, I propose that each member be allowed to speak for no more than 3 minutes, and members who wish to speak, please, press the button or put up their hand to indicate that you want to speak. May I ask which members would like to speak? Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Albert Chan. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Chan. Chairman, regarding the Kai-Tak Multipurpose Sports Complex, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Tony Chair for asking a very constructive question. I believe most people in Hong Kong may not object to the construction of a quality sports stadium. But the question is, we want to know what this stadium is going to be like and how it's going to operate and whether it's going to be cost effective. You can't, I think, Chairman, you recall that the same thing happened when we built the West Kowloon Cultural Complex. Mr. Donald Zhang proposed there will be a canopy, and then we invited bids for the tender, and all the 12 consortium objected, saying that there shouldn't be a single tender and award the project to a particular consortium. In the end, the ICAC looked into this, and they were able to identify some connection between senior officers and certain consortia. So for this one, it's very likely to be a repeat of what happened at the West Kowloon Cultural Complex. In terms of the transmission of interest, this may have been done in a more sophisticated manner, and it's more difficult for us to really, identify any flaws. So before we conduct this study, there are still many questions. Right from the time they did their design, whether the site is appropriate, whether Kai-Tak is the best location, whether there are no better alternative sites, and also building a stadium of such a scale, whether or not it's appropriate, and whether we need to add more facilities to the stadium. In the past, we proposed a comprehensive sports stadium, including facilities for swimming, velodrome, diving, and also combined it with a sports institute so that we can have a mega sports complex, rather than having the sports institute in Sha Tin and then Kai-Tak another multipurpose sports complex and yet other facilities elsewhere. What I have in mind is that the facility should also provide dormitory for athletes and be able to stage major events. But what the government is not proposing is neither here or there. It's also a waste of land resources. So regarding the DBO, there are so many questions, and we don't even know whether it's going to be cost effective. It's like the XRL. We were asked that we need to, expedite the construction of XRL, but it's not really high-speed railway at all. I mean, you paint a beautiful picture, but in the end, the taxpayers ended up having to pay. I won't rule out the possibility that this is yet going to be another white elephant. Taxpayers will have to pay and foot the bill. So we've seen all these blunders in the 1990s and even in the year 2000. We didn't have such mistakes, but the mistakes made in the last decade or so have been so major. I think we need to wake up. So I hope members will support my motion that we should adjourn our discussion on this item. I fully agree with Mr. Kenneth Chan. He said that supply will create demand. That is actually monetarism, and that is the origin of the bubble in the global economy. If we build an airport and we build the airport express, you assume that once you build the airport express, there will be passengers. But that's not the case. If, like Mr. Kenneth Chen said, the supply would create its own demand, then it simply will not work, because our urban area will be flooded with vehicles. Many from the pro-establishment camp said that we are standing in the way of Hong Kong's development. But I don't think we need development per se. We need a balanced development. And this is what's going to happen when you have, collusion between government and business. Anyone who is close to Tung Chee Hwa would support the proposal to build a canopy on top of West Kowloon. There's no need for any justification. After it's built, we don't. I mean, I would have been dead already, by the time it's completed. But you're leaving behind a white elephant. Please go on to the internet. I do that all the time. I go to the YouTube. cities, you go to Scotland and find out, what happened to some of the cities where they build useless facilities and they have to use explosives to destroy them. Scotland said that the sky will fall down if they didn't build those facilities. I'm not saying that we shouldn't build this complex, but for the questions that you cannot answer today, you're saying long hair is talking rubbish. If someone who is a layman asks you a question, you can't even answer the question. That is really pathetic. It's like you're not being able to answer the question raised by a 3-year-old child, right? So, well, you might have been brainwashed by the government, and you say that the electrical members, are always objecting for the sake of objection. Even if I were the, devil's advocate, you still need to answer my question. You're going to, adopt the design and build and operate model, and this is a model that the commercial sector will not adopt, unless, the facility will be handed back to the government after the operator has made enough profit. I don't really have anything further to say. The people from the government camp may think that we're still fully bustering, but that's not the case. Mr. Low Kwai Kwok, I'd like to speak against the motion that we should adjourn our discussion. Before we move to Cheklap-Kok, regarding this large piece of Kai-Tak site which has been left vacant and how it's going to be developed, there was a lot of discussion at the time, including the cruise terminal, which is now built, and the community also had extensive discussion as to whether or not Kai-Tak could be developed into a major, multi-purpose sports complex. Well, this has been discussed not only within the sports sector, but also the wider community, including the Kowloon City, Kwun Tong, and Wong Tai Sin district councils. They have all been consulted, and they all had a very, extensive discussion. And even the Harbourfront Commission was concerned, and I'm sure the government has taken on board many of their inputs. As for electrical, the paper said that on the 10th of January, the 17th of February 2014, and 6th of January 2012 had discussed this proposal. And members had expressed concern regarding the procurement and the funding aspect for this project. Chairman, we're not going to immediately proceed to build the sports complex. We're only talking about a pre-construction study, and that study had been the subject of local consultation already. It's a consultation regarding the concept, that is, the pre-construction work that needs to be done. And this is already our third meeting to discuss this item, and various members have put forward questions, and the Deputy Secretary had already explained clearly to us that regarding the design, the seating, and the funding model, and whether or not we're going to adopt the DBO approach, all these will be the subject of a study. And therefore, for them to apply for $62 million to conduct a study, why should we stand in their way? I don't think we should adjourn our discussion on this. I think we should continue. Of course, we should also urge the government to take on board the views expressed by members.
Mr. Ray Chan. Thank you, Chairman. I think Dr. Loy Kok should sit over there because he follows the government's way of thinking. It's only a funding application of $62.7 million, and we agreed that the paper first submitted was just contained just too little. Right, the panel was consulted on the 1st of January to, or the 17th of February and the 6th of February this year. Yes, we discussed, but does it mean that we handled all the issues fully? Now, the crux of the discussion was about cost overruns. And yet, when the paper is submitted to PWSC, nothing is said about the construction costs. Not only until we receive the supplementary information do we know about the cost estimate, $25.2 billion. So you want the subcommittee to work with you to approve the funding as soon as possible. Then you should give us as much information as possible instead of having us pursue you for more information until the third paper is available. We have no idea about the cost effectiveness of the project, whether there will be any cost overrun. So far, you haven't been able to answer us. Now, for the 50,000-seat stadium, which is the most controversial facility, even if you go to the FC, you will only repeat your argument that after building this stadium, you will have the edge to compete with other stadia globally for major events. Now, but our question is whether we should adopt this approach. Now, Chairman, I am all for another stadium, another Hong Kong Coliseum. However, for this 50,000-seat performance venue, I don't think there is enough justification for that. There are details in this paper that I'd like to pursue further. This also shows why I'm going to support this motion to adjourn the debate, because please tell us, for the government's replies to our questions, are you really happy with the answers from transport, from location, security, cost, the uses of the stadium, policy support? Nothing. So I support this motion to adjourn the debate for you to go back and reconsider how best to answer us in all fairness. Mr. Chan Kin Po. Well, this is funding for pre-construction works. Now, for the questions of quality, you've asked them. For questions of poorer quality, well, it's pointless to ask them because they won't be able to answer these questions. Mr. Tony Chair already asked a quality question, and the government has already undertaken to address this issue. As for other questions, even if you repeat those questions, I think we understand why they don't understand you, but even if you pursue these questions further. I think it's a waste of time to adjourn the discussion. And this is just the PWSC. At the FC stage, you can still raise these issues. I think it's really outrageous to continue to discuss these issues. Well, I think 50,000-seat stadium is not really a big one because we're looking at not only the domestic market but also audience from mainland and overseas. For other places, they have constraints. They cannot build a large stadium. Well, I think we can do away with questions on the 50,000 stadium. We can build even a larger stadium. So for the pre-construction works funding application, all the constructive comments have been made. I think we should proceed with the voting stage as soon as possible. Let's not drag on our feet. So that's my comment. I am absolutely against the motion to adjourn. Dr. Kwok Ka-ki. Chairman, it's true that we've spent much time on this item. But this is a project costing $25.2 billion. Now we have supplementary information submitted to us, but they lack details. Now, for example, on projections on the 50,000-seat stadium, on the events, site location. Now, we don't have enough information. I understand that we're in a plight because if we adjourn the debate, we won't be able to discuss the item. And yet the government hasn't been able to give us some quality answers, so to speak. And it's really difficult for us. We're talking about a huge sum of public money, $25 billion. It's not just about the $62 million for the consultancy contract. Very often the government would use this as a pretext for saying that LegCo has agreed with this project. We don't want to be put on the spot. If at the PWSC we agree with the consultancy report, it means that we're giving the green light to the whole project, and this is wrong. And the government is cautious about land uses. Now, the park is all right, the indoor games halls is all right. Now, these are the facilities that can be enjoyed by the residents in Kai Tak or in East Kowloon. However, for the 50,000-seat stadium, this is more controversial. First, because of its cost, and second, because it is not just a sports venue, it is a sports-cum-performance venue. Well, this is actually misleading the public if it is not a pure sports facility. Now, even if you say that the stadium is suitable for holding concerts, well, there are residents living in the area, and it's not fair to them. And I think we, instead of building the stadium here, the performance venue should be built somewhere in Sunny Bay, a new development area. And I raised this suggestion, and the government did not reply clearly why my idea doesn't work. If we just proceed to vote on this item, I don't think it's fair to the residents living there, because these 50,000-seat stadium will be creating much noise and causing nuisance to residents, and LegCo members will have to be responsible for it. Mr. Yip Kwok Him. Chairman, just now Mr. Chan Kin Po already made it clear that as far as the LegCo is concerned, we have had ample discussion and add our views, whether at this subcommittee or the panel meetings. Now, Chairman, even your good self has reminded members about the equality of questions. Is it really good for Hong Kong? After the airport in Kai Tak was re-provisioned, the site has been left idled, and this is also happening in West Kowloon. We need development. We should not get in the way of everything and anything. This is not good for Hong Kong. Now, of course, some members want the government to give an undertaking that how many shows will be held there. Let's imagine by the time it's completed, it will be years away. So it's really nonsense to confirm what shows will be held at the stage. And it's really naive. This is just we're just dragging on our feet instead of having development. And if you deploy the tactic of moving motions to adjourn the debate, well, you can play this game. You have more pan-democratic members here willing to play this game. But people of Hong Kong can see clearly whether this is right for Hong Kong, and we are against this motion to adjourn. Mr. Wong Kok Heng. Chairman, A member has moved a motion to adjourn the discussion. We all understand that this is just filibustering. Now the study is needed. It's needed by the people of Hong Kong, by the sports sector of Hong Kong. However, filibustering is just one of the tactics used in the non-cooperative campaign in LegCo by some members. I hope people of Hong Kong would understand what is happening here. In the morning, there is filibustering in this subcommittee, and then later on at the council meeting, filibustering continues, and public money continues to go to waste. Now, Hong Kong people feel helpless. I hope eligible voters would register themselves as voters, if you haven't done so, such that you can exercise your right. Well, please focus on the discussion of Section 33 motion, and to kick these members out of the council with your voting right. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Tony Chair. Thank you, Chairman. Well, of course, we have been discussing the Kai Tak multipurpose sports complex for a long time. The site has been left idle for a long time, and we have been discussing various issues like site location, etc. I thank Chairman for giving me time to talk about the design or the construction model just now. It's a matter of principle. Well, Mr. Leung, please keep quiet. Mr. Chair is speaking. This is just advanced works. Just now I heard that in relation to the model, the government has undertaken to come back to LegCo and discuss with members before making the final decision. In order to take a step forward as soon as possible, I won't support this motion to adjourn the discussion. If no other members would like to speak, does the government wish to respond?
Briefly.
I'm sorry. Yes? I'm sorry, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. Well, from what I heard during hours of discussion of this Kai Tak MPSC project, the major controversy is that there are concerns and different comments on the construction of the main stadium. For the indoor games hall and the park, there isn't much controversy. I'd like the government to respond to the following. Are you going to divide the study into two parts? One part about the stadium itself, and the other part about the indoor games hall, which can be enjoyed by residents in East Kowloon, because this is much needed in East Kowloon. So if you can separate the study into two parts, or divide the study into two parts, I think it's more appropriate. And the government can find a way out to address the issues raised in this meeting over the main stadium. So after this adjournment motion, if the government undertakes to divide the study into two parts, I think this will be conducive to our discussion.
Do we have other members who would like to speak? Since no other members would like to speak, I'd like to ask the government to indicate whether or not they would like to speak. Deputy Secretary.
Reference to that last point that was made there, I think we did say earlier during this meeting that during the pre-construction planning, all the items in 4A to J listed out in the paper would certainly come under review and scrutiny, and that of course does include the main stadium as well as all the other facilities. So there will be a review of the scope during that stage. All I would really like to say is that since 2007, when the outline zoning plan for Kai Tak was completed, the whole exercise was completed, there has not been any doubt that there is a strong public demand for this sports complex. Throughout the last 10 years, we've been speaking regularly to stakeholders, not just in the sports community, but also in the relevant district councils, to the Harbourfront Commission. Almost without exception, every person we've spoke to has said, we really need to get on with this project. Members of this council have urged us to speed up the planning process in the past, and that's been documented in Home Affairs panel documents. We are respecting the process for public financing of a project. We're going through the normal processes. We're not trying to make any exceptions or take any shortcuts, and part of that process is to do the pre-construction planning work to ensure that we can come back to this subcommittee in the next 18 months to 2 years with a firm and full proposal based on full justification for the completion of this project, which we have no doubt is strongly in the public interest. Thank you.
陳偉業議員，而家請你發言答辯，發言時間係。
Mr. Chair, Albert Chan, you may now speak, and you have 1 minute. Chairman, whether or not there is quality depends on whether we have the IQ and the wisdom. Many people don't understand the theory of relativity, proposed by Einstein. So some of the questions are not easy to understand. The government has made repeated mistakes. The media reported today again that the estimate for the XRL has suddenly reached, 90 billion. It could easily exceed, 100 billion. The pro-government camp totally disregarded the details of the contract and the cost. Because it was politically correct for them to support the government. Same for the West Kowloon Cultural Complex, the cruise terminal, the Hong Kong Macau Drive Bridge. The Kai Tak project is going to be a super white elephant. We're repeating the same story. We were told earlier that the Kai Tak site could accommodate more than 100,000 people going to live there, but now it's been changed to 70,000. So this committee resolved that we should adjourn our discussion on PWSC 2015-2016 3. All those in favor? Mr. Albert Chen would like to call for a division. So the division bell will ring for 5 minutes.
而家開始表決。
We will now proceed with the voting. Before I announce the result of the ballot, please confirm the votes that you have cast. The ballot is now closed. We will display the results. We have 36 members present, 10 in favor, 25 against. I declare that the proposal is not carried. So, since the motion has now been defeated, we will resume a discussion of paper 2015-16-3. Mr. Leung Kok Hong, I think Dr. Loh Wai Kok should at least be the secretary or deputy secretary because his argument is very clear. That is, we shouldn't stand in the way of this project. That's what the government is always saying. It always works each and every time. This is a solemn place, the electrical chamber, and we're told that if you stand in the way of what the government's proposal, there will be consequences. If that's the case, you shouldn't answer those questions. Because if you cannot answer our questions, I can only keep on asking questions. As electrical member, I need to continue to monitor what the government does, or I could be like Dr. Loh Wai Kok and Mr. Wong Kok Heng. I think they are actually performing even better than Mr. Fong Wai Kwong. I can tell you that the fact that you are not able to answer our questions is put on record. What the pro-government camp is saying is really shameful. You know, you look at West Kowloon, we're told earlier that there was going to be a canopy. We told the government it's not going to work, it's a waste of money, and the pro-government camp said that we were standing in their way. Same for the single tender approach. Mr. Leung, may I point out that you're already repeating yourself? Chairman. May I also point out that there are people who are, making personal attacks against me, and you're not able to stop that. So you can't stop me. What did Mr. Wong Kok Heng said? He is actually, what he is doing was actually, trying to lobby for votes. I can tell him that whether there's filibustering or not, if the government cannot answer our question, the government is actually doing the filibustering itself, and the eunuchs, shouldn't need to be concerned, if the emperor is not. You say that we lack standards. Have you read the papers? Did your assistant read the script for you to read out? You have nothing to say. Your assistant didn't, draft a script for you to read out. Your assistant did not read the papers. Other than attacking me, you have nothing of substance to say today. Mr. Leung, you said that you would give me your respect. Thank you very much. Mr. Long Hair, I don't think you should leave the chamber yet, Chairman. Some people, I think it is Long Hair who very often would not read the papers. And I can prove that I have read the papers. And secondly, just because a few members keep repeating the questions and keep saying that they don't understand the government's response, I don't think it's reasonable for 69 members to accommodate one member. So I hope, Chairman, you'll come to a decision as soon as possible. If members have no further questions. Mr. Albert Chen, originally I thought that was the end of the debate, but I think I must, retort what Mr. Chen Kim-pong said. Mr. Chen Kim-pong, please listen carefully. What was the government's response? Did the government answer our questions? I think we really commend, members like Tony Chair who really have quality. Mr. Chen Kim-pong think that he has a good grasp of the issue. For the entire sports complex, the government has given us no answers at all. Questions regarding the construction costs, we pressed him about the $25 billion. We didn't answer the question if we didn't press him. What about the DBO? approach. How much did you know about that? How much you know about how this sports complex is going to be managed in the future? People like Mr. Chen Kim-bong, who are from the pro-government camp, really infuriate us. The projects that you've supported in the past have always exceeded the original budget. We're talking about taxpayers' money. Please remember that. You shouldn't be a lackey. You look at Hong Kong and the poor standard of governance in Hong Kong now. I really have sympathy for the civil servants. The policy secretaries and the CE, they would only focus on transmission of interest. And originally, you were supposed to Kai Tak should accommodate a population of more than 100,000 people. And then Henry, Fok, or rather, Mr. Fok Chun Ting agreed with Mr. Tung Chee Hwa, and then the government changed its mind and decided to build a sport complex there. Same for the cruise terminal. It was the White Terminal. The West Kowloon, culture complex, the consortium agreed with the government and decided on a single tender. Ultimately, this was, the secret was leaked out and the government changed its stance. So since the handover, many of the government plans did not, stick by the good tradition we built before the handover. In the past, it was systematic and transparent, and after the handover, gradually become simply channels for the transmission of interest. All the government lackeys would support whatever the government proposing, totally disregarding the needs of the community and whether or not it is cost effective. You look at the, subdivided flats, in Chin Wan. Why can't we build more housing units at Kai Tak so that people have, a place to live? And instead, you come up with all these projects which are white elephants. You're wasting taxpayers' money, and the project always overrun. Mr. Tony Chair asked a very good question and asked the government to answer, and the government's answer was really a mess. So why do you still want to support the government, Mr. Chen Kim-bong?
Thank you, Chairman. I think people in Hong Kong know very clearly who the lackeys are in this council. Well, Mr. Chen Kim-bong is the good man. Mr. Albert Chan is the scum, and we should watch out for him. Mr. Chen Kim-bong, would you consider withdrawing the word used? Please then rule, Chairman, on whether we should use the word lackey. Now, Mr. Albert Chan, you did not pinpoint anyone when you used the word lackey. Well, if you want to put label on yourself, then so be it. Now, first, can you confirm, Mr. Albert Chan, when you used the word lackey just now, you did not refer to anyone? Chairman, you're correct. Somebody just want to put labels on himself. So please calm down, Mr. Chen Kim-bong. He has already clarified. So let me continue. I hope he won't interject. Let's not waste time. All right, let me handle this. Mr. Chen Kim-bong, just now, Mr. Albert Chan, for the record, already confirmed that when he used the word lackey, he wasn't referring to any particular member. So on this basis, I also asked you whether you would withdraw your remark. You used the word, in quote, scum, when you referred to Mr. Albert Chan. I would not withdraw. I would say that any member engaging in filibustering is shameful. They are scum. I think that no member would put that label on himself. I'm sorry, Mr. Chen Kim-bong, I don't think this helps because Mr. Albert Chan is clearly identified as one of the members who filibustered. So if you say that any member filibustering is scum, then you're referring to Mr. Albert Chan. Mr. Paul Chair, Chairman, as a barrister with so much legal knowledge, well, in the case of libel or slander, you can read the whole context. Any reasonable man who think that the person is being referred to would amount to slander. So I think about what Mr. Albert Chan said, much of what he said was directing at Mr. Chen Kin-po. So if you allow a member to pass his criticisms and then withdraw the remarks, I don't think it's meaningful. We should be polite towards each other. It's offensive, and you should not let those people get away. And punish members who would not just pass casual, abusive remarks. I hope you would rule on this. Well, I already make my ruling as chairman. I don't intend to argue with anyone, including you here. I am asking this question. Mr. Chen Kin-po, are you willing to withdraw your remark of Mr. Albert Chan being scum? Now, I don't intend to debate on your ruling, but about your ruling to be passed regarding Mr. Chen Kin-po's remark, I think we should be clear about this. Well, to anyone's ear, that member may be referring to some other another member, and that member can be allowed to withdraw his remark, and yet you at the same time forcing another member to do something else. There should not be any differential treatment. I heard you. I respect your opinion, but I will make my ruling as chairman. Chairman, may I continue? I just want to point out that I don't wish to delay this meeting. I will leave the room now. I protest. I protest against Albert Chan as a scum.
好啦，陳健波議員呢係而家不在席。
Mr. Chen Kin-po is not in this room, and I cannot take any action against him. However, I think Mr. Chen Kin-po just now, in the same sentence, referred to Mr. Albert Chan as a scum, and I don't think this is appropriate. Well, if there are no other questions, I will put this item, PWSC 2015-16-3, to a vote. Would those in favour? I claim a division. Mr. Chen Kam-lam claims a division. The bell will ring for 5 minutes.
我想問一問咧。
Now, Mr. Chang Paul, after you left the room, I made a ruling. Voting begins.
喺我宣布表決結果。
Now, before I announce the voting result, would members please check the votes? Voting is closed. The result is displayed. Voting result: 36 present, 21 for, 14 against. I declare the item carried. Let's move on to the next item. PWSC 2015-16-12.
民74 KA 興建西九龍政府
74 KA. Members are invited to recommend to the Finance Committee the upgrading of 74 KA to Category A at an estimated cost of $47.425 million in money-of-day prices for the construction of West Kowloon government offices. The Financial Affairs panel was consulted. Members in general support the project. And the report or the salient points of discussion at the panel is now tabled in front of you. And we have from the government representatives from the FSTB, ASD, and GPA. So I will now invite Mr. Frankie Loy, PAS for Financial Services and Treasury, to brief us on the project. Mr. Loy. Now, it is the government's policy that whenever possible to accommodate its offices in government-owned properties and to relocate non-location-bound government offices out of high-value areas. In order to accommodate this policy and to help alleviate the shortage of government-owned office accommodations, we propose to construct the West Kowloon government offices in Yau Ma Tei. There will be two blocks of the West Kowloon government offices with 175,000 square meters of office space, and it is estimated that $160 million rent could be saved, and this will help release office space in Yau Ma Tei, Wan Chai, etc. And the space would also be used to relocate the 3 offices in Wan Chai, and the WKGO will give priority to the 3 departments, namely Transport Department, LCSD, and the GPA. And after relocating to the WKGO, the vacated office space will be leased out to increase the supply of office space in Wan Chai. And part of the the government offices in the multi-story car park in Yau Ma Tei would also be reprovisioned. The building will be demolished for the Central Kowloon route. And in the middle of last year, we started the tendering process for the project. The tender document will be valid until the 25th of June next month. The MOD prices is estimated to be $47.425 billion. With the support of the PWSC, with funding approval, we hope to commence project in the middle of next year for completion by 2019. I ask members to support this project.
Thank you very much. Members who have indicated they would like to ask questions are James To, Wu Chi Wai, Dr. Helena Wong, and Mr. Wong Kok Hing. We'll start with Mr. James To. Thank you. Chairman, I just have a minor question, but this is actually a matter of concern for the residents living in the area. I've asked this minor question because I don't have major difficulties with the main issues. The question is this. The Olympia City and Fuying Garden, I think there is a shortage of car parks in that area, and a major developer, Sino-Land, had actually tried to sell these car park spaces more than $1 million a piece, and of course it is now very common for car parks to cost more than $1 million these days. For the hourly and monthly car parks, they have all been fully leased. I've asked the government a question, and they gave me the car park provisions and the number of departments which will move in the new complex. We're told there will be more than 90, and they will all be, car parks for directors and also operational vehicles. But so therefore, the residents in the area would like to know how many people actually will be driving there. The government told me that the government staff will not drive to work, especially because it's near the MTR station. So I need, in making the assessment whether people will drive there to work, one of the criteria I used was the income of the civil servants. Let's say for someone who is earning a salary of more than $50,000 a month. I mean, if you only earn a salary of $20,000, $30,000. I think if you have a rich parents, it wouldn't be surprised if you drive a Porsche. But I'd like to know how many people who are earning more than $50,000 a month. The number is quite large. I'm not saying that all these people will drive to work, but so long as 1/5 of them do, or 10% of them do, and there's only a supply of less than 200 car park spaces, then the rentals will go up in the area. And it's as if I'm speaking on behalf of the residents living there who need to drive. And because it's possible that the car parks will be the subject of speculation, and the rent for each car park could be push up to $4,000, $8,000 a month. But this is of course you cannot ask people earning less than $100,000 a month shouldn't drive to work or park illegally there. They still have the right to drive to work and park there. Either have lease a car park on a monthly basis or use the hourly car park and so on. So I don't know whether or not the government could give me the figures. Let's say for the civil servants are earning more than $50,000 a month. There are many of them because there are many people work at the professional grade. Most of them engineers will be earning that much. I'm worried that if only a small percentage of them drive to work, then the car park, there will be a serious shortage of car parks. So other than that, there would not be other impact on the residents in the vicinity. Mr. Y? I'll ask the government property agent to answer the question. The car parks in government complexes, when we make provisions for car parks, these car parks are mainly for the use of government vehicles and for visitors, as well as those who are physically handicapped. For civil servants working in government properties, the provision of private car parks is not one of the terms of service, and it's also not our policy. So therefore, we always encourage our colleagues to use public transport to go to work, to come to work. In the West Kowloon government complex, I think public transport is very convenient. As we've said just now, it is close to the MTR station, the Olympic station, and the Yawate station. It is also accessible by franchise buses and PLBs. And another residential development nearby has a public transport interchange. Mr. Toh, I understand, is concerned that the project will not put pressure on the property value in the area or the demand for properties. Past experience have told us that our civil service colleagues, if they are not allocated car parks where they work, and if they try to lease their own car parks in private properties or developments nearby, that is certainly not very common. So I don't think members will need to be unduly worried. Chairman, I'd like to ask further some further figures so that the government can publicly provide such figures. Could you provide such figures required by Mr. Toh? I think we've already given Mr. Toh the figure. That is, for the West Kowloon government complex, there will be about 3,300 people working there. Those at the rank of D4 and above, there are 3. From D1 to D3, 62 or 1.8%. Those on 45 49 of the MPS, 6.7%. The rest would be on 0.11 to 44 on the master pay scale. Of course, it's difficult for us to estimate the demand based on the rank of the civil servants. But as I said, according to past experience, civil servants, if they're not allocated a car park, it's not very common that they would lease a car park in the private developments. I'm talking about people, who are earning salaries more than $50,000 a month. Why is it that he's willing to provide such figures? I think Mr. James Toh's question is very clear. Those earning more than $50,000 a month. Do you have a figure for that? Chairman, I've already said that for those on the 0.45 to 49, D1 to D3, there are no more than 300. Or those people earning more than $90,000 a month. Someone on a D1 scale is earning more than $90,000 a month. I'm asking, for the number of those who are earning more than $50,000 or more. So Mr. Toh is drawing the line at $50,000 a month. So those on the MPS 33 to 45, they make about 25%. 30 to 44 on the MPS scale, how much would that be in monetary terms? Those on points 33 to 45, which is equivalent to $50,000, roughly. Could you repeat that? Well, those on points 33 to to 45, there are 840, or Mr. Wuchiwai. According to the paper, we're told that the government lacks its own, premises to accommodate its own offices. But I note that on this site, I don't know whether the government has made full use of the plot ratio, so that we can try our best to satisfy the demand for office space. And after you've done this, could you tell us this? That is for government departments which are now operating in private commercial buildings or grade 8 office premises. How many floor areas are still being occupied, and how they could be redeployed in future, so that we can release the valuable, Class A office premises to the market. Mr. Loy, I'll ask the ASD to answer the question regarding the plot ratio. Regarding the office space in private, premises, I'll ask the GP to answer that. But I have to point out that we are reprovisioning several government complexes. For all these government complexes which will be reprovisioned, we will retain some space to accommodate government offices which are currently located in leased, private commercial properties. I think the plot ratio is 8. Right now, according to the present design, the plot ratio is 7.99. Next, the government property agent, Mr. Chairman. Under the management of the government property agent, we have about 1 million square meters of office space, of which 300,000 are leased from in the private market. Whereas I said it is our policy to move our own offices into government-owned properties. If there's no geographic constraint, then we would like to move from the high-value district to the newly developed district, so that we can promote the development of such districts. We have noticed that while we have leased some private properties, however, we are gradually moving out of the central business district. Chairman, we were told that the ASD has allowed a plot ratio of 8, but in the private market for office premises and office buildings, what is the typical plot ratio? Is it more than 8? Why did the ASD give a plot ratio of 8 and not the maximum? Mr. Leung? The planning department for any government project will conduct an independent assessment. It will take into consideration the development density of the district, the transport and infrastructural capacity, and then come up with a proposed plot ratio in respect of the project. Chairman, my question is for a typical office building, what is the plot ratio? Not a government, complex. For private, office buildings, what would be a typical plot ratio? On the question of plot ratio and the development parameters, there are several constraints. Mr. Chow has put up his hand. Would you like to provide an answer? There is no typical plot ratio. The site is a GIC site, and it will depend on the project, the nature of the project, and the transport and infrastructure facilities available in the area, and then we will fix a ratio. The director said that the ratio is 8. The ratio is decided after all the parameters have been taken into consideration. It doesn't mean that all the buildings would be given the maximum plot ratio. Now, before we continue further with our meeting, I'd like to point out that for the first round, we have Dr. Helena Wong, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. James Toh, Mr. Christopher Cheung, Dr. Kwok Ka Kay, who would like to speak. For the second round, we have Mr. James Toh. It is now already 27 past 10. If I were to extend the meeting to 10:45, we only have 18 minutes, and we have, just enough time. So we don't have enough time. But in that case, I'm not going to extend the meeting then. So I don't think we can force this. Dr. Helena Wong, would you like to speak? Okay, we'll let you, finish. Chairman. My biggest concern are two. First of all, I have two concerns. First of all, the new government complex in West Kowloon, according to paragraph 8, we need some arrangements regarding the West Kowloon trunk road, but I don't think they have yet, this PWSC has yet discussed this project. And now the government is submitting all these projects one by one for our approval, and I think I really object to that approach. Dr. Wong, I'm sorry, we still have Mr. Wong Kok Heng and Mr. Christopher Cheung are in the queue. I think they also have something they would like to speak. Why don't we let them speak, and we still extend by 15 minutes anyway? But you won't have enough time anyway. Are there any members who would object to extending the meeting by 15 minutes? You object. For the majority of members, except for one member, is there any objection? Well, in that case, I exercise my prerogative and I declare that we extend our meeting by 15 minutes. Dr. Wong, I hope the government can, submit the details regarding the Central Kowloon route as soon as possible. Regarding the Central Kowloon road, according to paragraph 8, since you're going to demolish the Almaty public car park, my concern is the same or similar to Mr. James Toh's. For the Central Kowloon road, after you've demolished the Almaty car park, there is no plan to re-provision the car park. The car park in Middle Road, Tsim Sha Tsui, has also been demolished. It will be demolished. Again, there's no plan to re-provision that car park. And now, in Yau Ma Tei, you are proposing to build this government complex. Many civil servants will be working there, and the 92 parking spaces that you propose, will they all be used by civil servants? Could the public use such car parks?
So Mr. James Toh just now said that the parking spaces aren't even enough for civil servants, let alone the public. And then the civil servants will need to compete with the public and use public car parks. And this is a major problem. And I said this to Undersecretary for Transport and Housing repeatedly, that you cannot just demolish the public car parks in Tsim Sha Tsui, in Yau Ma Tei first, without any plan to re-provision the car parks. And then you're going to have more civil servants in the area, and therefore all private parking would become more expensive. So I hope the government would answer this question. Also, after demolishing the Almaty multi-story car park building, I don't know what will happen to the library there. It seems that there is no such library in the new WKGO. If the library is not re-provisioned, then to the WKGO, where will it be re-provisioned? The Government Property Administrator? Chairman, regarding the Central Kowloon route, now our plan is to free up, after demolishing the Almaty multi-story car park building, we provide space for reprovision some of the government offices. As for other issues arising from the demolition of the car park building, it's not directly related to this new government offices. And as for parking space, I explained just now that we do not anticipate civil servants causing a greater demand and therefore a greater pressure on the supply of private parking spaces nearby. And we do not have car parks. We do not have parking service available in the WKGO. We don't envisage a heavier traffic flow in the area, and we discussed with the district council and we explained in great detail. And we've also undertaken that when the block is almost due for completion, we will study with the transport department on the transport and traffic issues surrounding the WKGO, and any proposal will be put forward to the DC for consultation. Chairman, I want to clarify one point. For the existing West Kowloon government offices, there is a public car park and there is a whole story full of AM cars, that is government cars, and the public would need to go up to as high as the 4th floor for a parking space. Now, you say that there aren't many government vehicles there, but after reprovisioning, will there be sufficient parking spaces? There aren't enough for the public already. You mustn't wait until the construction is completed. You must do your assessment. You should go and count how many AM cars there are in that multi-story car park building. GPA, we're talking about the WKGO for accommodating the provisioning of some of the government offices in the Yaomate multi-story car park building, which will be demolished. As for other facilities to be demolished for the construction of the Central Kowloon route and the reprovisioning, there are other arrangements, meaning that apart from some of the offices which will be reprovisioned to the WKGO, they are not directly related to our project. So that means they're not putting people first. Well, I think what the two members asked was that you should take a more macro view. Well, but you're affecting the whole district, the whole area. He hasn't answered the point about the library. Well, let's wait for your second round. I'll ask other members to speak first. Mr. Wong Kok Heng. Thank you, Chairman. Now, some of the government offices will be reprovisioned to non-core business district so as to release office space in the core business district for commercial use, and I welcome that. And according to the paper, about $160 million could be saved annually in rental expenditure, and I support that as well. I have a question. As an elected member in Hong Kong, I'm concerned about the 3 government offices in Wan Chai. After they are reprovisioned, what is your plan? The floor space leased, how much government revenue are we talking about? Can you explain in greater detail? Because it seems that the details are not in the paper. Who would take the question? Well, let me talk about the plan as a whole. As mentioned just now, we're going to reprovision the offices, and it's a large-scale project concerning 29 government departments and over 10,000 staff, and we're talking about an office space of 175,000 square meters. And the project will be undertaken in phases, and we need to reprovision a number of offices. Now, for the first phase of the exercise, once the government offices are reprovisioned from Wan Chai area, the office space will be put up for lease, and as for other departments, the same would apply. As soon as the government offices are reprovisioned, the vacated premises will be put up for lease so as to increase the supply of office space in grade 8 office space in Wan Chai immediately. At this stage, we have not prepared a detailed estimate, and I'll see if the government property administrator has anything to add. Now, for the 3 office blocks in Wan Chai, altogether 175,000 square meters are involved. Say the rate is standing at $700 per square meter in Wan Chai for office space. Then, based on this estimate, the monthly rental expenditure is 120 million. And after reprovisioning the government offices, what the revenue will be, we cannot make this estimate at this moment. Have you asked the RVD to make a rough estimate on what the rental income would be? Now, as explained just now, we prepared a rough estimate based on the prevailing market rate in Wan Chai. But after reprovisioning the 3 office blocks, we're going to lease the office space out, and it will be a few years down the road, and it's not possible to estimate now. If the reprovisioning will take place in phases, then are you going to explain to the public how they can access the services? Because for the 3 office blocks, you have the law courts, you have the immigration department, and they're very much related to people's livelihood. Definitely we will do so. That's why we explained that we need much time for preparation, because all the affected government departments will have to be consulted. For example, after reprovisioning government offices, how will the frontline services be affected? We need to consider very carefully the locations to be reprovisioned. Now, before the reprovision, definitely we will make appropriate publicity effort so that the users, namely the public, would be aware of the new arrangements. Thank you, Chairman. Just a brief note. I hope the government would do publicity for the convenience of the public, because for the 3 office blocks, right now, the public is well aware of what services are available there. So you should make sure that the public is informed. Mr. Christopher Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. I note that in the vicinity of the West Kowloon government offices, according to the government's paper, there are 2 schools. One primary school is just a street away. So I want to know at the construction stage how you can ensure that the dust emission and the noise would not affect that primary school or the schools. And it's also been mentioned that the noise barriers will be erected. I'd like to know, for the noise mitigation measures, can they minimize the noise nuisance, and how, can you ensure that the schools nearby will not be affected? If the measures are not effective, what is the remedy? Yes. I'll defer to the ASD to answer this question. Mr. Leung, thank you for the question. We understand that there are 2 schools, one secondary and one primary school in the vicinity of this site, and we will take this into account at the construction stage. As far as noise is concerned, we have we are going to use a particular type of piling instead of percussive H piles. Instead, we're going to use a large diameter bore pile, which will be bore piles to minimize the noise impact on schools. On dust emission, yes, we would pay attention to this as well. At the construction stage, we'll ask the contractor to implement measures. For example, vehicles should be cleansed before going in and out of the site, and we also have dust prevention nets. Mr. Zhang, how many years of construction will be needed? ASD? Well, if the project can be approved smoothly in the middle of this year, works will commence in the end of this year for completion in the beginning of 2019. During the construction stage, we will keep in close liaison with schools and residents nearby. There will be a working group which will closely monitor the impact during the construction, and we will minimize the impact on residents. Nothing more from Mr. Zhang. Dr. Kwokaki, we have some 2 minutes. Would you speak now? Yes, please go on. Chairman, I see in the paper that there will be a student health service special assessment center and a dental clinic for civil servants. Now, these are two different healthcare services. Now, in deciding what public services to provide, have you consulted the Department of Health, the HA, and the Social Welfare Department? If so, now why haven't you included, say, an elderly center? Because in West Kowloon, we're short of elderly services center. And earlier, we also discussed residential care home for disabled children. So I want to know how was the consultation done in deciding what service to provide. We don't have a representative from the Department of Health here now, so please give us a supplementary paper next time about healthcare and social services to be provided. Why haven't you included more in the unused plot ratio of the government offices? Well, perhaps I'll defer to the government property administrator to take this question. Now, as mentioned by the Director of Architectural Services, we have used all the approved plot ratio of the site. As to what departments or services are to be included, we conducted internal consultation at the design stage. We consulted the government departments as to whether they want to set up an office there, and all along the site is planned for government offices, and the district is well aware of our plan, and we're just following our plan in building these government offices.
Regarding the other welfare facilities and homes for the elderly, of course, at the planning stage, there will be other arrangements. Of course, we cannot place all the required necessary facilities on a single site. I understand that nearby at Hoi Fai Road, the government has already reserved space for the provision of services for the elderly. So other alternative arrangements are in place. I was asking them about the process of consultation, and I wanted some papers. I do not object to your doing this. Of course, if you've done it, I would welcome that. I just really want to know why you are not making the fullest use of the space here. There's still some spare room. For example, first of all, the plot ratio depends on the planning requirements. If we find that people are waiting for a long time to get welfare services, so I think the government could be more flexible in determining the plot ratio, especially if In areas like Yamate, which is an old district, there is a shortfall of many services because of the lack of land. Why can't we make the fully use of the site? So we don't have enough time. I hope they can give us a paper at the next meeting to tell us how what have they done in terms of consultation and what have been accepted and what had not been. We've already overrun, so we will continue our meeting at the 13th of May, and we'll ask the government property administrator to continue with his answers to our questions. Thank you.